What's up, guys? Chris Fluck here, Chris Fluck Podcast, episode 37. Today I got Will, Geosits. What's up, man? Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Man. Just a quick intro, quick rundown. We're laughing about it. People might not be able to tell the difference between us two right now, but hopefully you guys got that situated. Will, give you a quick background. So me and Will met. I was coaching football at Saucon, and then basically what happened was you want to just kind of go into the just the whole agreement and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
With the,
So, like Chris said, he was coaching football at Saucon Valley. I was at the time working for St. Luke's University Health Network through their sports performance division. They would contract out to local high schools, and I was fortunate enough to get placed at Saucon Valley to be responsible for running their weight room. So, Chris and I met, I would say, January or February of like 2017 maybe, and
something like that. Maybe, I don't know. Was that it? Was that when you were there?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I got there a little bit late. I got there in right around the end of the winter, beginning of the spring, and I was fortunate enough to work with Chris for a couple months, and very similar. I always tell people very similar philosophies. You like to try triphasic training, so do I. So we hit it off. I thought we hit it off really well.
Yeah.
And I think the kids got a lot. It's one thing working in a high school setting is the kids aren't really fortunate enough to have, not everyone's fortunate enough to have one strength coach, but to have two.
Yeah. Two
strength coaches to run a weight room that it wasn't very big, but I think they got a lot out of it.
No, you see there's obviously some specimens out there, right? There's some gyms in the area that have these super strong kids, but at the end of it, I think if we had 40, not even 40 kids on the team, say, but we had say 20 kids that could front squat, 245 or 225 at least, we'll say. Over half the team could do that. Over half the 10 to 15 kids could bench 225.
Yep.
We had 6 to 12 kids that could clean, 205 to 225. I don't know. So I think just overall, being at a small school, we just got a high percentage of those kids doing some respectable things, and it wasn't. The focus wasn't hey, let's have this big bench press. You get to 275, and then kind of neglect everything else. It was kind of like a full scale, full circle kind of training, and I think it. I think it paid off well. So
yeah, I think it was super unique too, because being at a small school, you had the kids playing 3-4 sports, and I remember being there and football player be I'm gonna go wrestle, and then I'm gonna go play lacrosse, and then do track and field in the spring, or baseball and track. You had 3 or 4 sport athlete kids type. So working with them is always a treat.
And we, so the weight room was pretty tight. So just just some trial and error stuff. So we had potentially 25 kids. And so basically what I learned, say through the 5 or 6 years I was doing it, started out, hey, everybody's going to do workout A on Monday, workout B on Wednesday, workout C on Friday. I'm giving out workout cards. I'm spending a ton of time putting this stuff together. Then at the end of, say, the 12 workouts, so 4 weeks. So at the end of the month, kids start handing their cards in, and I'm this one kid had wrestling practice every Wednesday, so he literally didn't come Wednesday. So he spent all this time trying to be I'm going to put this well-rounded program in, but not everybody came every day. So then it got to the point where I was guys, we have 12 workouts. You have to do them all in order. So, workout 1, workout 4, workout 7, workout 10, they were comparable, now kind of built off of each other. And then the same with that second block, same with the third block. So then it became you have to fill out your whole card before you get to the next one. So the kids that came a lot, it's the rich get richer almost. The more you train, the greater gains you get, the more benefits you get out of it. So they got rewarded, say, with more advanced, better programs, stuff like that. And I think another added benefit to that, not having every kid do the same, so not everybody doing the same program, allowed you to use the space to its full capability. If you had a Monday workout that was bench press or squat, you can't have 25 kids on 3. We only had 3 racks, I think, at the time. Maybe there's 5 now, but really 3 kids, and we had 25 during the summer, maybe up to 40 kids. So not having them do the same stuff allowed those kids to go deadlift over there, do some cleans over there, do some dumbbell exercises in another section. Able to space the gym out. You could still get in an hour, but that took 3 to 5 years to figure out. I don't know, just stuff like that. So the people that have all the resources, they don't always get the small school stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's freaking tough. Even when you're coaching, there's guys from the big schools come down and coach in the Colonial League where I was coaching, and it's they were terrible. They went right back to coaching with the big schools because they're just I can't handle having 28 kids on a team. Like, you don't know what the hell to do.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
barely have a JV, and
and at that point, like you say, it more or less becomes, okay, these are the resources that I have afforded to me at the moment.
Yeah.
How can I maximize, using them to get an efficient workout in? Case in point, like you said, if you have one squat rack, like, and you have a team of 40 guys, like, is there really a benefit to having that one squat rack then at that point? Like, you have 40 guys, one squat rack, like, numbers wise tells me not everyone's going to be able to use this. So, but you might be fortunate enough to have, like, I think, like, they had up at the weight room 120-pound dumbbells. I think they had like 2 or 3 sets of them.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I can now, the resource that afforded to me, with all of these dumbbells, all of these kettlebells, all these extra plates, like, I'm going to maximize the usage of all of these as opposed, and, maybe shy away from something that has, 1 or 2 uses. I think they had, when I was there, they had, the jammer, the pull down, like a lot of like the seated, like machine stuff. And I immediately was like, let's get rid of these.
Yeah.
I'd rather get rid of these, because one of the biggest things I always talk about to people is space. Like, I will get rid of, I will just do anything I can to get rid of things to make more space. Because if I have more space, I can accommodate for more kids. And we were able to get rid of some machines and, create more space in the weight room, open it up a little bit more. And fortunately, like, really good athletic director was able to buy some more equipment for us. And, thankfully with the football booster club, we were able to get 2 more squat racks. But yeah, like you said, it's, how useful can you be with the resources you're afforded at the time?
Yeah, and I mean, we were kind of joking a little bit about it, but there's one guy was in. He's like, yeah, my kid's going to this school. Their lacrosse team's training. There's 13 kids, and they only have 5 racks. And I'm like, geez, that's cool. They should be able to figure this thing out pretty quick. But maybe that brings to the point. Well, here, let's go with what. So Will was working with St. Luke's. Got basically assigned Saucon Valley,
Yep.
right? You worked
Yep.
with all the teams there.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about that, and then we'll go to your new position, we'll say. So you have this trained athlete. So you have a kid, right? You could have a team. They're both 16. One kid could work out for 4 years. The other kid could be 0 years.
Yep.
So you have the kid that has 4 years of training experience. They could be twins even. They could be the same exact age, born on the same day. But their training programs are not, well, I don't want to say they're not. They shouldn't probably be identical, right? Like, you
Correct.
probably agree with that.
Yes.
So you got that dynamic. Now you got girls teams, say, coming in, middle school, whatever. So how do you start navigating some of that? So let's say there are some parents out there, like, in your opinion, you got an 8th grade girl wants to get involved in some strength training. They send their kids to the school. Like, what do some of those programs look like in your experience? Like,
Yeah.
how'd you end up there?
So one of the things that, I do right away is, and I'm glad you brought that up, is not every kid's the same. Everyone's going to need different things. As it pertains to the sport as a whole, like, yeah, I would agree. I would say, though, that every sport, has certain injuries that are comparable to them, and this movement pattern. So trying to figure out a way to train a team in that sense, I think programs should relatively be the same. But backing off that a little bit, when you do have those individuals, right, it takes a really good coach, I think, to be able to look at the team as a whole and pick out, individuals that have movement deficiencies or lack certain strengths where, realistically, you would love to bring every kid in on a team and be like, all right, we're going to go back squat right away.
Yeah.
But if you have a roster of 40 and 20 of them never worked out, like, you obviously can't do that. So being able to, talk to the coaches, talk to the players, see training history-wise, what they've done in the past, what they haven't done in the past, and then kind of like program. I like to say I like to program backwards. Take like the most inexperienced lifter and program for them, because in my mind it's easier to take a kid from a dumbbell, like a goblet squat, and put them on a barbell squat, like a back squat, versus take the kid off the back squat and regress them down to a goblet squat. I think a lot of times in a weight room setting, like, confidence is big, So if you can, all you're really trying to do is build confidence in a weight room. You build confidence, they have success, they see that success, that makes them feel good, and they want to continue with that success. So in my mind, start lowest and build your way up. But like with parents wise, like I talk to them all the time before a kid comes in to train with me, and give them a little background on what they're going to do. Obviously start with dynamic warm up, some mobility stuff, and then based off where they are, in a training, in their training age, training history, I might have two girls come in, two 8th graders, like you said. One of them might have been training for a year, the other one might be their first training session. So what I like to do is I like to give, it follows the same outline. So if we're going to squat, you're both going to squat. It's just a matter of how you're going to squat. One might be using a barbell, one might be using body weight, or some like TRX, something like that. So I like to try to keep it flowing in a very similar pattern, so you can kind of see like where they're going to be at some point.
And then, I mean, just in terms of teaching stuff too, like you talked about the machines and stuff. You wanted to get rid of them, say. There's that, for some reason, some person might think, hey, we got the Smith machine. That's basically the bar hooked on the rails. My kid can learn how to squat on this thing, but really, you're kind of doing them a disservice because it's not a natural range of motion. You have a bar in your back, and the rails are going to force you into a certain position. Whereas we talked about every kid being different. Everybody's squat's going to look different. So your goblet squat might look a little bit different than mine. My front squat or whatever squat I might have a narrow base. Somebody else's feet might be a little bit wider, toes turned out a little bit. Everybody's hip anatomy is a little bit different. So it's like you need to have some blanket rules. Hey, we're all going to squat today, but the squat doesn't. Your goblet squat to his front squat to his back squat. It's all about kind of where they are, what their body type is, whether or not they could even, not crumble under the weight. You could have a senior in high school that could deadlift whatever, 500 pounds, but the moment you put a bar in their back or in the front, they might end up crumbling under it. So it's like you need to have a little bit of variability, and not just be. So I think that's where experience comes in. I don't know if you would agree with it. Where
absolutely, because like one of the things I tell a lot of coaches and parents too is, if I work with a baseball player, right? They'll say like, oh, like his one of the biggest things I always get is he needs more core strength. I'm like, let's just get full body strength first.
It's like, what does that mean?
Exactly, and then we can worry about whatever your.
But to be honest, it's not a knock on the adult or the coach or whatever.
No, absolutely not.
But it's like, what do you mean core strength? Like, what the hell is that? Some people define it. You can find 20 different definitions if you look at it. You know?
Man. If I had $1 for every time a parent or a coach said, "Oh, a team needs more core strength," I wouldn't be doing.
It's like, all right, maybe they do it.
But like one of the biggest things too that I see a lot of is.
It's not that it's not important, but it's just like.
Right.
All right.
But they'll talk about like. I'm glad you touched on like the squatting and like location of the feet and everything like that, because to me there is no singular perfect pattern, right? Everyone's built different. Everyone moves different. So if you line 10 people up and you assess a squat and you're like, okay, 8 of you have a perfect squat and 2 of you like don't. Well, why are the other 2 not perfect? Like what separates? What is your criteria of a perfect squat? Because in my mind, it's if you can get to 90, if you can comfortably get to 90 and stay down there. I don't necessarily worry so much about knees over toes so much as long as their heels aren't coming off the ground. So you can take me for example, when I squat, I've seen it in videos, my knees go forward, my heels don't come off the ground. So I don't necessarily worry so much about stuff like that. And I mean, I blame a lot of it on, not necessarily social media, but the day and age we live in where it's like, oh, this is like you go to like ESPN and they show like a pitcher throwing a baseball or a quarterback throwing a ball. You're like, oh, this is how you should throw. This is how you should swing. Like, well, why? Like, I golf. I'm not very good. My swing's not the most perfect, but I can hit the ball straight and I can hit it, 100 yards out there. But my swing's not perfect, but it gets the job done. So for me, it's like, I want good movements, but at the end of the day, like what's perfect for you isn't perfect for me and vice versa.
And I think they just want certainty. So, like black and white. This is it. This is not it. So the people that do well, I think, in the sense of like not do well like give the appearance of doing well. They've got the Instagram page teaching this, that, and the other thing. It's usually one way or the other way. It's not like, because nobody wants to hear the truth, like, well, not the truth, but nobody wants to hear the back and forth with, like, some people can squat, like there's that dude, there's a guy, Joel Seedman. Have you ever seen his stuff?
Yes.
So 90 degrees in his mind, how can we do this here? So the knee comes forward, past the toe, the butt, in that sense, they're getting to 90 degrees as this shifts forward, but then their butt's a little bit higher, so their hips aren't dropping below their knees. But if you look at the joint angle at the knee, it's 90 degrees.
Right.
In his mind, that's where he wants everybody to train. Whereas other people might teach, like when I squat, I still get my butt almost, I'm just low. I'm getting down to the heels almost. So I squat very deep. But when I see Joel Seedman say 90 degrees is fine, his 90 degrees, he's smarter than me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to question that. If that's where he wants his people to squat and they're staying healthy and there's no issues, fine.
And I think at the end of the day, though, you just hit the nail on the head right there. That's the biggest, that's the biggest thing. Are they healthy? Are they reaching their goals? Then at the end of the day, like, they're healthy and they're reaching their goals. Like, all right, well, I'm not going to worry about this that much anymore. And
I think one of the big things that is good, there's a couple reasons that I like what kind of just having St. Luke's sending people in to do, is because, there's this thing like, so say I coach football. Before I was there, they were doing, say, a bigger, bigger, stronger, faster, bigger, faster, stronger.
Yep,
I get that name mixed up with the documentary. Did you ever see that documentary, The Bell Brothers? It's about steroids. It's pretty good. It's about 6 years old. Check it out.
It's on Netflix?
It should be, yeah. But anyway, so they're doing that program, right? But so the coaches are putting them through it, and these coaches, they've done barbell exercises. Some of them played football in college. I'm sure they squatted, benched, whatever. But they just don't know the variation component to everything. So it's putting everybody on the same program. Why are we doing this? Because I said so becomes the answer, rather than trying to explain something to them, or, hey, my back hurts when I'm doing this. My knees don't feel great on that. So just having sport coaches in the weight room is good because it's to get people to work out, but then you lose that variation component because they might be history teachers. They might be math teachers. They're not spending time watching stuff. They're not going to conferences and trying to learn about stuff. And so with that being said, St. Luke's sending, people in that, for the most part, you need to have a degree. You need to have a CSCS or no?
Yep.
We're talking exercise science. We're talking CSCS, or we're talking about athletes, that have trained and competed at high levels. They also work with kids, and I think that's pretty good. And, just to kind of circle back to what you said about that, I think the example was like the 8th grade girl, getting more 8th graders in the weight room is good for everybody, right?
Yes.
But then there might be that parent or two that wants some special attention.
Sure.
For their daughter or whatever, and then that seems to be the type of person that I would kind of end up working with. So in theory, it appears that St. Luke's is sending coaches to schools, but really all they're doing is getting more kids to work out, and then out of those new 5 or 10 kids, 1 or 2 of them might end up seeking out a private coach. Yep. And it's like, so it almost looks like St. Luke's is going to take money out of my pocket, but really they don't, because they're getting more people working out. They're getting more people into the sport-specific type training, and it's kind of anyway. I think it's great that what is going on there. They're getting more people involved. They're, hopefully getting less injuries out of it.
I think so, yeah.
So it's pretty cool. Now, I did want to talk about something. We talked about, the squat. Let's go with that then. So, what was at St. Luke's? I own a private gym. Will just took a job at a new school district,
yeah,
Springford. Was it District 1? We're outside. Yep. How close to Philly?
Maybe like half hour.
30 minutes outside of Philly. We were talking before we went on about pretty much that. Hey, St. Luke's is sending in. There's a lot of competition in the area. Everybody wants to get into this game of sports-specific training, or whatever you want to call it. What led you to go the route, working at a different school district, or because you got hired by the school now as opposed to through the hospital. So, what was that thought process? Like?
Yeah, I love working with high school athletes. One of the biggest things that I've been saying for the last couple of years, and people come to me all the time, they're like, oh, you do a really good job with these kids and these teams. Why don't you ever think about like opening up your own place? And one of my biggest things is like, or especially in the Lehigh Valley, I think it's just become very saturated, right? Me and you can sit here. I think we did like 2 weeks ago. You could just rattle off.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different gyms that are all within 30 minutes of driving of one another. So and they all do different things. So my time was up with St. Luke's. I needed something a little bit different. So I found a job at Springford. I went down to hear them out, interviewed with them, and they have a couple local gyms down there that do stuff. And one of my concerns was that how long would this position be? If I were to get this position, because they could easily do something very similar to what St. Luke's does, or even down there with the health networks, they could come in and
could happen. Right?
It's a worry, but right now I'm just kind of rolling with it, and I'm enjoying it very much. Everyone's been really great, but yeah, working with the high school athletes is awesome. I have a lot of connections in college sports, and one of the biggest things that, in strength conditioning, and when I talk to them, is they get athletes that they're frustrated because the kids don't know how to move and they don't know how to work out. So, I was talking to one of the strength coaches at Villanova a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that I told him was, I like to run a weight room because I do have a college background with strength conditioning, and I said I run my weight room like a college weight room. I want these kids to all, especially the ones that want to go and play a college sport. I want them to be prepared. And for the ones that aren't, and being in the private sector, I'm sure you see this a lot. How many people do you see in a month where they haven't exercised in 10, 15 years, and now they're finally starting to get back into it, and it's really difficult.
Yeah.
So in my mind, if I can get these kids prep for college, and if I can give them something that PE's not giving them, where they can learn how to work out and they can build that habit, so when they go to college they stay active, and when they're outside of, they graduate college, they join a gym and they stay more active. So in my mind, I'm trying to do things that are going to benefit the future of our country, if you will. But going back to the athlete aspect of it, is a lot of these strength coaches again see they're just not up to speed, and they have to spend too much time teaching them, as opposed to the athlete coming in right away, in a sport perhaps. They go out to their sport, okay, football, I expect you should know, how to tackle, how to block. I expect you should know how to do these rudimentary things, so now we can do more complex stuff. Whereas in college, they're kind of guessing, do you know how to clean? No. Okay, I'm going to put you over here. Do you know how to squat? Well, I did a little bit, but okay, we're going to put you over here. So now, instead of getting a kid day one and being able to clean them, squat them, do all the things that not necessarily juniors and seniors are doing, but something that they can get them a little bit on a faster track to where they need to be, they have to spend a semester or two teaching them everything, as opposed to getting them in with everybody. So one of the initiatives that I'm taking with a lot of these kids is I'm listen, you want to go play in college? This is what you're going to do in the weight room. If it's good enough for a college athlete to do, it's good enough for you to do. Or we can split hairs on, to what extent. I don't think a high school kid...
You're still following the,
correct,
goblet squat
yeah,
is going to precede the back squat. So it's
Yep.
Just because the college is back squatting doesn't mean you're going to negate and skip
Yep.
the foundational work that'll get you
Right.
to do it accordingly.
Yep.
And I think that's a problem where I didn't mean to cut you off, but I thought it was just something that your brother, say, whatever, you have an older brother that played college baseball at Villanova, we'll go with. They have a baseball team, right?
Yep.
All right. And so he's 5 years older than you. He's playing there now. You're like, oh, cool. I'm just going to use his program in the summer. Meanwhile, you're 14. You never worked out. Your brother's got 5 years of training, 5 more years of training than you have.
Yep.
So you're totally missing out on the foundational stuff.
Yep.
So it's there's this, I think the guy's Brett Jones. He's a kettlebell guy. He's all of these skills that you learn is, it's just creating that glass. So the more stuff that you learn is going to create this wider glass, and that's the more stuff you put in. More stuff fits in that glass, whether so it could be a sports skill, right? You just teach the foundational stuff. You want to try to open that glass. It's not that narrow focus with hey, my kid's playing baseball and that's all we're going to do. Just play baseball 10 months of the year, do baseball specific training, yada, yada, yada. But then you're missing out on those foundational skills. I see it a lot with wrestling. Wrestling is a unique sport where these kids could do these incredible things, but you ever see some kids run and it's so goofy looking and so
You can
heavy.
always tell when the kid's a wrestler. Just watch him
Yeah,
run.
but I mean, you watch nationals now. Do you watch it at all?
Mm-hmm.
These dudes are athletes, man. They're freaking athletes. So it's go ahead, have your kid wrestle all year around when he's 7, 8, 9, and he's going to get past when he's older because these athletes, they're going to have a wider skill set. Once they start learning that technique when they're 14, 15, 16, they're going to be better athletes than you. They're probably going to be stronger, and they're going to beat you. You might be the best 13-year-old, but you're going to lose when you're 15, 16, 17, 18 when, if your goal is college, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose. So anyway, sorry about that. Cut you off there.
That's a good side note, though. I like that.
Yeah, I think wrestling's a perfect example. I've just from coaching it for 5 or 6 years. It's like these kids just teeter out there, man. They're like fresh. They're the youth champ for 3 years. They do pretty good in middle school, but they get to high school and they maxed out. They peaked out. It's one of those sports where if you do early specialization with wrestling, you're going to be great 12 and 13. But you kind of peak early, and it happens to a lot of kids.
Yeah, and you can even use the basketball analogy. Think about how many kids you've seen growing up that were always taller than everybody in middle school, and they were all, this kid's going to be the next great thing. And then he's done growing, and now everyone's caught up to him, and he's not that great anymore. Same thing I see with wrestling too.
Youth football too.
Yeah,
the fastest kid in youth doesn't learn how to play football. He just gets the ball and just runs by everybody. He doesn't get the work ethic because he's faster than everybody. He thinks he's the man. He's not always the greatest team player, and then middle school comes around, high school, the harder worker kid, because he had to work when he was young, might pass him by. That kid, because he has no work ethic, he's not the fastest anymore because he's not training as hard as everybody. And, he might be a subpar player, might be a backup and whine. He might end up quitting and going to play lacrosse for all we know. But I don't know. Anyway, sorry, what were we going to go with?
But yeah, no, I mean, like,
you were talking wrestling, I think, and then I cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. It's the same thing, like you said about like the height in basketball. Like you might have a kid or two that it might be a little bit peak a little bit more physically, like 6th, 7th grade, and then like you said, like everyone catches up to them in a couple of years anyway. So it's like I've seen kids like, oh, the kid was really good in middle school and elementary school, he didn't do anything in high school. Well, everyone caught up to him. So and like you said, like you almost wonder if you get a kid like that, I'm thinking about myself personally. Like I'd rather grow up and fail a bunch and work my butt off, so when I do get to high school, like it pays off, versus have a lot of success. Because at the end of the day, like you talk about that all the time. Like, what do you learn from success? And I've had this talk with football coaches, like just coaches in general. Like it's great that like your team can go undefeated every year and run the playoffs, win a state title, but what do you learn from? You don't learn anything from that. You just learn that, hey, we're really good. We don't really need to do much of anything because we're just going to go out there and beat everybody. But if you fail a bunch, like, okay, like you learn, like, these are our strengths, these are our weaknesses, and I think you could become a better coach when your team fails. I think you become a better athlete when your team fails because it teaches you more than what just winning in general does.
What's the stat? It's that whole Mike Boyle had a youth training program out. I talked about it. I did a thing on it, but he was talking about hockey. Your kid, what's he really going to learn going 40-0?
Sure.
Probably nothing. You got this stacked team philosophy, and you have kids transferring. I talked to Frank. You met him a few weeks ago. The topic gets brought up a lot. Kid, I'm going to be a backup quarterback at one school. Oh, I'm going to transfer to this school. Oh, you don't end up starting there? I'll transfer to a different school. So instead of facing that, maybe changing positions, maybe working a little bit harder to try to beat that guy out, maybe being a team player and doing whatever you can for that team. They're going to kind of blame that situation and just go to a different one. Sure. Then they blame that situation if they're not a starter, go to a different one. And I think it sets a kid up for failure down the road. Stacking the AAU team, what the heck is that going to do for you? You got the best team when you're 14, nice. You don't, what happened? And then you go play a team in Philly, what happens? You get beat. Or you go play, say you're a Philly school, and then you go up and you play a team from New York or whatever, like lacrosse. I was just in Long Island. Lacrosse is huge in Long Island. Yep. The best teams in the Lehigh Valley, they're getting smoked by the Philly schools. Yep. The best Philly schools are getting smoked by the Long Island schools. So there's a varying degree. Obviously, you don't want to get your ass whooped all the time, but I don't know. There's a certain sweet spot.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, like who's gonna remember that? I was in 8th grade and we won an AAU state championship. Like no one's gonna remember that. But if you 30 years down the road, you're like, oh hey, remember that time we were seniors in high school and we won a state championship? Like you're gonna remember more of that than you are like an AAU thing. Like I used to live down in Chester County, and I used to do baseball instruction, and this is where I kind of saw a lot of that, where we had a travel team out of our academy. We weren't always the best, because those kids and those parents at the time, like, they would rather go, like you said, play on a stack team, and these were like 6th graders, 7th graders. But when push came to shove, when those kids got to like 9th, 10th grade, they were coming back and playing for us. And then those kids would win because what we were doing was we were providing them service to, like, recruiting. Like, we were getting them, we had a lot of like ex-major league players, minor league players, college players. So like we were able to give them insight on like what you can expect at the next level. Yeah. So it's like that opposite like dynamic, whereas like when when you're younger you go and you play for the trophies, but then when you get older, like you're like, okay, like I'm not in it for the trophies anymore. Like I'm in it so I can get a scholarship, go to the next level or something like that. So you start to find the resources that are available to you, where you can get that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think too, with that success thing, where I was just talking to anyway, my daughter's not even 2 yet, but it's like you see her engage and everything that she's doing. She's totally focused. She's totally into it. And I'm like, I need to somehow replicate this and like try to remember this, because when she's 5, we need to challenge her the same way she's challenged as an almost 2-year-old. And when she's 8, we need to throw stuff at her that challenges her and engages her in that same way. And like I need to never forget that. And I think if you're not challenged or engaged, even in athletics, say when you're 11, 12, if everything is easy for you, you're not gonna get as much out of it. And I think staying idle and doing, I don't know, I just think you just miss out on something, I think. And if you're not constantly challenging yourself with stuff and going 40-0 on a stack team, it's probably not going to advance you and develop you the way that you want to, rather than going 20-20 and losing some tough games and winning some tough games and whatever. I think you're just going to be better off down the road that way. Which brings me to a question that we were talking about at the gym about 6 weeks ago that you don't have a clue which way I'm going to go on this one. So we'll get your good, honest opinion on it.
Sounds good.
You got a kid. Let's use Saucon Valley again. Okay. Freshman. They have a freshman basketball team, we'll say. He's one of the better freshmen on the team. Or he could go up, play JV, and maybe play a half, say there's a kid that's a junior on JV, same position, they're going to each play a half. What do you do for that youngster?
If I was that youngster, or like if I was a coach?
Let's say, what would you recommend? What advice?
I would tell that kid, go play freshman. Go play. Go eat up all the minutes. Go eat up all the minutes. Yeah. Because you're getting that experience, and your talent is being wasted by you just sitting. Like you're not getting anything out of it.
Zero.
I think I talked to a football coach talking about that. That was 2 years ago, I think. They had a thing with like freshmen and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, you probably might as well just go play him right away. I mean, you got a good team. Like he's gonna have success. Like there's gonna be confidence there. Like you're setting him up for success in the future, as opposed to I'm gonna sit you and then hopefully you develop on JV where it's probably gonna be too easy for him. Yeah. So if you have the opportunity to play. And when I was coming up in high school playing baseball, we were on an AAU team. Now we were all a little bit older. We were doing it for the college aspect of it, but we weren't in for the wins. But we went to Penn State for a weekend, and we got to tour the facility and everything. And one of the biggest things their recruiting coordinator at the time told us was, listen, don't get wrapped up in the Division I scholarship, like the bells and whistles, all the glamour. Go somewhere where you're going to play. Yeah. Now, if that means like you're going to go Division III, there's nothing wrong with that. Go and be a starter from day one. But that was a very valuable lesson that I learned very quickly, because I want to go play Division I. I want to go play Division II. But then I got humbled very quickly when I wasn't the biggest, or the strongest at the time, and wasn't getting recruited by 1 and 2 schools. Yeah. I was getting a lot of Division III looks. So what I ended up doing was I went Division III and I played for 2 years, and it was awesome. Yeah. So I tell kids all the time, like, listen, don't get wrapped up in, I'm gonna go play varsity as a freshman, because chances are if you're playing varsity as a freshman, they're not gonna waste you. Like you're going to play. But in that regard, like freshman JV, like we'll play a sit you a half. I would tell you just go play freshman where you're gonna eat up all those minutes.
Yeah, same. Total agreement. But the thing that we were getting in here, Frank agreed as well. it was the parents that we asked. They all wanted to go play up, and we're like, huh? Like that's the issue, is that, you know, they think playing up is the secret sauce or something for their child development, because they're playing with older, bigger kids and yada yada yada. And thought it was a big mistake. They didn't agree with it at all, and they were surprised. They thought we were going to agree with them. Like, so I'm like, yeah, let's play up, let him get beat up, whatever. But I'm like, well, he's not playing. He's sitting on the bench.
If you think about it, though, this brings us back to the comment the thing we talked about before about like success and failure, right? Like that kid is going to get beat up there, and he is going to fail a lot, and he's going to learn. So,
it's a fine line.
Whereas playing as a freshman, like you might end up doing the beating up and have a lot of success. Now, where I would say the downside of this whole thing is,
Yeah, but you still play teams that are better than you.
okay,
You know?
yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
not like what we're saying about the Lehigh Valley team losing to a Philly school, and a Philly, like there's always going to be tiers. Like
Right,
with football
yeah.
at Saucon, we always got smoked by a Catholic school.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to face some competition that's
Right.
going to be
Well,
better.
I mean,
So it's like,
where I would say the disservice comes is, you know, I don't see anything wrong with playing up, especially if you're a freshman. You know, you're playing against guys that are physically bigger than you and stronger, and like they're gonna outmuscle you for things like that. And you'll learn a very valuable lesson. Where I think the disservice then comes into play is where you're only playing half the amount of minutes.
playing is more important than playing up.
Correct.
Yeah,
So-
no, I agree in terms of development. So, you know, and then even in that regard too, it's you know, maybe you get a better practice opportunity playing up, maybe that, but the practice is usually controlled by coaches.
Sure.
There's usually not a lot of free play going on or anything like that where, you know, the kid doesn't have an opportunity to test his skills because he is on the bench for a half or whatever. So there is a fine line. It's not like one's right, one's wrong.
Right.
But I think playing is more important than playing up, and I think it's just the best way to learn. In terms of, it's not like the kid's going to score 40 points. You know, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about LeBron James and saying, hey,
Right.
you got to play freshman basketball. There's obviously exceptions, and some kids need to go up, but just not everybody.
Right.
But yeah, it happens younger too, where I don't know, kids, and then the kid get discouraged pretty quick too. They're getting beat up. They're not getting attention. They're not getting coaching, and whatever. Few things that you brought up earlier I wanted to talk about.
Sure.
One that I think is important is I think that like the NSCA has this thing. The one dude, I think his name's Rick Howard, puts out a lot of stuff, but it's like they take a cradle to the grave approach with their long-term athletic development stuff. It's not, unfortunately, I think, and that's kind of the approach that I take, and it might not be what always parents want to hear or coaches want to hear, because they might want somebody to be like, let's get, you know, Jimmy to college, be the greatest athlete ever, but really it's like, just try to give them a fun environment here. Like, you see some of the stuff that 9, 10, 11-year-olds are doing. We're ripping monkey bars, we're climbing ropes, we're jumping, we're doing ladders, we're throwing medicine balls, we're sprinting, we're racing each other, we're jumping rope. You know, we're going to do stuff like that. We're going to teach all of these foundational skills. Then as they get older, if they want to do other things, they can. But, like, that's why I think that you could almost separate yourself. We talked about having the saturation point, and I thought about it too, and I look at what I'm doing, and I'm like, Jesus, there's everybody doing this, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not even gonna play that game. And it's like really more about giving the kids and everybody that comes in like this good positive training environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's from the cradle to the grave. So I thought that was great that you talked about that, because you know there's so many kids that come in. Hey, I'm gonna train, or just kids that you talk to. I'm gonna train, get a scholarship. All right, cool. What happens if they don't get the scholarship? Or what happens if they quit then in college? Are they just not gonna work out? Are they just gonna give up on life? Are they going to be the guy when they're 40 talking about that 40, AAU team? They're the only ones talking about it. You know, the people that, if I could shoot up for one more game, you know, I would give my, you know, it's like, seriously, dude, what the hell? Your life sucks that bad? Anyway, so the cradle to the grave approach, incredible. I think it's important. Teach these skills that kids could do for the rest of their life. Squat. They're always going to have to pick stuff up. You know, they're always going to probably have to push themselves up. They're going to have to get off the ground.
Yep.
You know, they're going to have to be able to get out of bed without pain. They're going to have to be able to go downstairs without pain, climb stairs without pain, all that stuff. You might need to, you know, push your car out of a ditch or something. Who knows what.
You never know
But
where you're
anyway,
gonna end up.
No, I think that's important. That's cool. And whatever, I got a bunch of random stuff here.
Yeah, no, I mean I do love that approach. Like, you know, and you and I
It
talked.
just hit me because that's kind of what my thought process was. But I'm like, I just didn't know how to like. It's like like a mind, like the thoughts were always there, but then just to see other people
Yeah.
that are like have been doing this for 30, 40 years that are like, hey, this is the right way to go, guys. I was like, it just like I don't know, just kind of clicked one day that I'm like,
Yeah, and I think a lot of it stems too is from like it almost has to be done that way because when you and I talked about that a couple weeks ago too. It's like kids aren't going outside playing anymore. They're not learning how to run, jump, land. They're not learning how to land. Biggest thing. So we have to now teach them that. So it's like you can't necessarily bring a kid in here right away and be like, all right, let's throw some weight on and let's do some heavy squats. It's like, nah, like let's do some foundational work. Like I can tell you like firsthand in all my warm-ups that I do, there is some sort of plyometric. There's everything I do is just a huge focus on landing and deceleration. Like, you know, that's a big thing about being a kid and running around at recess or running around with your friends. It's like you're playing tag, like you're doing all these things. Like you learn really quick, like how to slow down and stop, how to jump off something and land nice and soft. So it's like you're not doing that anymore. Everyone knows how to run. Like I don't think anybody would ever argue with that. I think every kid knows how to sprint. Tell them, hey, run from here to there as fast as you possibly can. Everyone knows how to do that. Everyone knows how to jump. Like you tell someone, hey, jump as high as you can. Like they all know how to do that. But what I end up watching is how do you slow down from that sprint? How do you break down at the end of it? And then how do you land when you're done jumping?
Yeah.
And it's like you didn't grow up learning how to do all of that stuff like through trial and error, like stuff like that. So now I'm gonna have to reteach you. So yeah, like I love the cradle to grave approach. I love the slow cook approach. Like, you know, I get you if I'm lucky enough to get you in 6th grade. Like I'm gonna have you for 6 years. So like there's literally no, for me there's no rush. There's
is that where the
never a
kids?
rush.
Is that at your new school at Springford? Is that the plan? Is to get middle school age kids in there?
Yeah. So I've been
So sixth grade's what, 12ish?
Yeah, right now I'm talking with the football coach about doing getting some middle school football involved.
They have 7th and 8th grade as well there? Is that how they do it?
Yeah, so their school is huge, right? I was talking to a bunch of the coaches, and they have every sport there has a varsity. They have a JV. Some have freshmen. Some even have a blue and gold team, like a JV blue,
Yep.
JV gold. So like, you know, what they were doing for middle school was their football team, because they're so big. Their football team was going around, and you know, they were just beating up on everybody because like their numbers were dwarfing everyone else's. So what they ended up having to do was their football coach thought of the idea like let's split the team. Like we'll have 2 coaches. We'll basically draft a team for each side, and at the end of the year we'll play each other and see how things go. They ended up scrapping that because they want all the kids to play together now. But so yeah, the plan is to get some 8th graders in. I'm going to see how that goes, and I would love to open it up to all the other middle school sports, because again it goes back to what I said about like the kids in college. Like, you know, I've had this talks with the athletic director, the coaches, the principal, like how valuable it is for me to get a kid in 8th grade, start them in January, and then come May when they start their summer workouts, like I might have 20 kids that are already 5-6 months into a training program where I don't have to, you know, go back and reteach you everything. Like you already are up to speed. Like, you know, the coaching cues that I'm going to give you, you know, the way the workout flows, like you're familiar with your teammates. Like I think having 5 or 6 months of that under your belt is completely valuable. Like you can't replace that. We're also in a little bit of an area where like kids start getting poached from, like the St. Joe's Prep, Pope John Paul. Like they'll go out and like poach kids from like North Penn, Springford. Like,
Yep.
So, you know, a lot of the coaches see that and they're like, well, let's get the kids in the weight room and, you know, let's try and ingrain them.
Let Springford's strength coach them in middle school, and then we'll poach them in high school, and they'll be good to go.
And that was the
No,
other
I'm just
thing.
kidding.
You know what? I then brought that up. I was like, yeah, it's great to bring an 8th grader in for football like that, but you know, if I'm going to train them and now like they might blow up and they might do very well and they move very well, they're very strong, and then they're at the end of the day they're just like, well, thanks, I'm going to go over here now, and now for the next 4 years you get to watch them get grabbed.
That's a game, though, man.
It
It's
is.
just what it
It's
is. There's
gambling.
nothing you can do about it. People in this area or people in Pennsylvania have been complaining about this forever, and there's nothing you can do.
Nope.
Nobody complains when you whoop the Catholic school. They only complain when you lose to them, you know?
Exactly.
Which stinks. I think that freaking, not to be critical of this town that I grew up in and even where I coach, but it's like, hey, what are we teaching our kids if we're going to say, hey, we only lost because they poached talent, you know? What are you teaching that kid? You're just giving them an excuse. Then those kids adopt that excuse.
Yeah, who is it? That's Lamar Jackson's shirt, right? The one I just saw him come out with like a couple weeks ago.
I didn't see this.
It says, "No one cares to work harder."
Yeah.
Like, I like, come on, like that.
Seriously, that sums it up pretty good.
Yeah, that's like the greatest. That's like a very short, blunt message where it's like, no, listen, no one cares. Just work harder.
With the team, we would play the one school, Notre Dame, 5 years ago. Notre Dame was 0-10 at one point. Smoke them.
Mm-hmm.
What are the parents saying then? Nothing.
Nothing.
We get smoked by Becca the same year. Then everybody's pissed. I never understood it, man.
Can't win. You literally can't win.
So you brought up a point about Springford that I thought was interesting. I always had this one theory in my mind. So I always feel that, you know, these, say some of the youth coaches, some of the parents in the area, they're thinking like, not even in the area, just in general, like, hey, you know, our kids, they got to play together their whole lives, and that's why they're successful. But Springford had a thought, maybe we split these kids up into two different teams. You said they don't do it anymore. But then at that point in time, you could have 22 kids getting tons and tons and tons of reps. That over the long haul, that could have been a better approach for them. Granted, they didn't play together, but it's like, I think people overvalue that. NFL, playing together matters because if you're a receiver and a quarterback, this is wide open, you know, this much. But so every little rep, that probably counts a little bit more than those reps as a 7th and 8th grader, my opinion.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, again, it's fine. I think it's a fine line. I think it's great if you can get everyone playing together. Like, you grow up doing it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
You might lose some good talent. You might lose those late bloomers.
You might, and even with it, but still, like, you know, this goes back to the JV freshman argument. Like, you split the teams up, right? Unless you have, like, let's say we'll use a running back or a quarterback, for example, right? Unless both quarterbacks are identical, right? They both throw, they both run, they both do everything exactly the same. You know, if they're on one team, they're gonna split reps, which I would probably argue I hate that, watching like college football and seeing quarterbacks split reps. Like, the offense can't get in sync because one does one thing, one does another. That's here nor there. But if you have two kids like that, they're gonna have to split reps, right? So you're getting half the reps that you normally should. Whereas if you split the teams up, now you're gonna get 100% of the reps that you should be getting.
It's an interesting thought.
The problem then lies is, well, when you go to high school, like, there's no two varsity teams in high school.
Well, you weed it out eventually, I guess.
You either someone either puts in the more work in the weight room, they get bigger, faster, stronger, and, you know, they set themselves apart that way, or, you know, you pick a new
coach
position.
might have to make a tough decision.
Or
eventually
the kid,
you're gonna have to choose. But I don't think I don't know enough, and I kind of been out of the loop a little bit. But I think if a coach were to come in and say, hey, this is what I want to do, I think he would get a lot of pushback. And I think, honestly, I don't know which one's better, but just as a coach's mind, if you're like, hey, we have 50 kids on this team, we could cut this down to 25 to 30 on each squad. You're going to get a lot more kids on the field, and they might develop better in the long term. There's no real way to prove that, I guess, but it's an interesting thought, and it'd be a bold move for a coach.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, you know, where I'm at now versus when I was at Saucon Valley, I think I will forever think this, one of the biggest things that hurts a small school like Saucon is depth. We're at Springford, we're 6A school. So, you know, we might be 2 or 3 guys deep at every position, and, you know, our third running back could probably start, you know, Saucon or somewhere else. You're just kind of stuck where you're at. But yeah, I mean, like, playing them all together, like, one thing I will say is I'm glad, you know, I'm in the position that I'm in, and I think you might agree with me as that, where, like, you don't have to make those decisions as a coach, and, you know, nothing really ever falls back on my shoulders unless, like, the kids just aren't strong. Yeah. But I'm glad, for one, that I do not have to make those tough decisions like that.
I just had that thought. It's interesting. I don't really know how some of the big schools in our area handle it. Do you know? I mean, where'd you go? You went to
Northampton.
You know, a school like a Parkland. Do they have one middle school? And if so, it's probably
No, Parkland has a couple. I think Parkland
Their
has
seventh
two.
grade kids might be able to play youth still.
I think so.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Weight dependent, obviously.
So I know, like when I was at Northampton, we had Northampton used to pulls from Northampton, Bath, Lehigh Township, Moore Township. So you had 4 like youth organizations.
Yeah.
So I always liked being.
But then one middle school.
Right.
So after youth, it became
correct
one
So
team.
I always liked the middle school, or even the high school aspect, I should say, for like the Legion baseball team. Like we all went to one team. So you played with each other for your baseball season, and during the summer you go and you play in your Legion team. And at the time, I think Northampton only had Northampton Legion, or then Lehigh Township might have got a team, but then they quickly came back to Northampton. So we might have lost 2 or 3 guys, just depending on where you live. Like some kids lived in Bath or Bethlehem, that might have went and played for like a Bethlehem team.
Yeah.
But, if we had 20 guys on our varsity baseball roster, I'd probably say we had 14 or 15 that were playing Legion. So it was always nice, playing with the team you were with, so you can have that kind of camaraderie. But definitely not as big a school as Parkland, so we didn't have to worry about it too much.
But a few more things, man, that I took note of here.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out where to go with it. Training, we talked about, say, that 14-year-old kid that worked out for 4 years, and the 14-year-old that never worked out a day in its life. Those two programs look different. Before we started recording, I was at that NSCA conference, and we talked about, one guy talking about this blood flow restriction stuff and using it with athletes. This is his words, every NFL team, every NHL team, most NBA teams, MLB teams, everybody's using it. That got me. He's using it with his kids, athletes, whoever he's working with, high school, college, whatever. So you asked me, what do I think of that? I'm not doing it and don't really foresee myself doing it unless I do it myself for a while and maybe have some sort of breakthrough. I'm like, wow, this could work. But that gets me thinking about the stuff that the pros do. You ever see Tom Brady's book? You ever look through that thing?
A little bit.
I only looked at the pictures, and when I was at an office, and I was jokingly sending them to Frank, like, dude, check this out. It's him doing stupid stuff, right? And I'm like, he's doing these band things, and I'm like, all right, cool. He's doing those now, maybe, but that's not what got him to the NFL.
Correct.
Blood flow restriction might not get you to the NFL, but if you're an NFL player, you're a pro athlete. You already got this incredible level. You already got this incredible skill. What you're doing in the pros is not what a 14 or 15-year-old should be doing.
Right.
That's something we talked about a little bit before. I mean, you got any opinion on that, or is that pretty much?
Yeah, I mean, so a little background on me a little bit. When I was doing my master's, I did an internship at Harvard, and one of the things that I noticed when I was there was that the upperclassmen, mainly the seniors, and the freshmen were doing completely different workouts. And if you even dissect it a little further, sophomores and juniors were all doing different, they were all doing the same movements. They were all just doing the variety, the variety of it was just a little different. And I asked the one strength coach, I was like, why are the seniors doing a different workout than the juniors, and vice versa? And it makes sense now that as a freshman, all they're trying to do is put size on you, right? Get you stronger, get you up to speed with everything. But as a senior, you're in that program for 4 years, so your training age is 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. You have 4 years of getting the crap kicked out of you in Division I college football. Now you also don't know where they came from in high school, right? If you come from a program that I run, or that other programs that have high school strength coaches, those kids, if you were there with them for 4 years and they're now a senior in college, they've trained for 8 years. So the wear and tear on their body, is enough alone to make you kind of adjust their workout a little bit. But going back to the question, pros versus high school and college, no, I don't think what's good for a pro is good for a college kid, which is good for a high school kid. The pro has all this mileage on their body, so like you said, at this point they're just trying to maintain what they already have. They're just trying to go out and get ready for each game, whereas a high school kid's trying to get to the next level. And yeah, you can do different things with a high school kid than you can with a pro. watched a video a couple months ago, and it talked it was a video of, I think, the Washington Redskins, their weight room, and if you as they're going through it, it's all like Cybex machines and just machines on machines, and I'm like, what are you supposed to do with this? And one of the buddies that I was with was like, well, listen, like, he was an ex-NFL player for a while, and he was like, listen, like, these guys are worth millions, so don't break them.
Yeah.
So what can you do to keep a guy on the field that's going to be very low impact, so you can keep them on the field? That makes sense. It's put them on machines. Not my style. I don't like that. I also don't want to deal with the liability of this guy's worth $50 million. He's got a huge contract. Like, don't hurt him. Like,
well, you'll just lose your job.
Exactly.
The strength coach, the guy, the running back, the All-Pro gets hurt doing whatever, a clean or a freaking squat, and now you're not going to the playoffs. Head coach gets fired. You'll never get our job again, potentially.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll be coaching at Lynchburg College down there.
Yeah, but so the high school kid, like, no one, like, if you hang clean a kid and like, if he gets hurt or whatever, like, no one's really gonna, like, you're not gonna lose your job. You know what I mean? Like, that's, in my mind, by you stepping into a weight room, like, you're already assuming a risk of injury, like, if you will, because, like, yeah, you could, like, there's everything that you can possibly think of, like, equipment wise, like, you just have to be safe about the training and, like, how you're going about things. I've seen programs where, like, it just looks like utter chaos in a weight room, and I'm like, someone's gonna get hurt. So, by assigning, doing different things to assign, like, hey, we're going to go 4 guys to a rack. Like, when this person's doing this, you're going to be spotting them. When they're spotting them, you're going to be doing these accessory lifts. Like, so you can kind of keep everyone flowing. But, going back to the original, I didn't mean to get too far off topic.
No,
but,
dude, no, it's all good.
Going back to the original, like, yeah, man, Tom Brady's like 42 years old. Like, hey, if you can get out there every Sunday and compete, like, whatever you're doing, man, you keep doing it.
Well, I thought too, I mean, this thought I had kind of ties in with it in the sense it's like, all right, it's kind of a smart ass answer in the sense of like, hey, what do you do? Say somebody's like, 40 and they're jacked. The person played sports growing up, continued working out afterwards. Oh, somebody would ask that question like, hey, what do you do for fitness? Like, how do you get in such good shape? Well, the answer really is like, I played, 12 years of organized sports, explosive activities. I sprinted, I threw, and I played basketball and football, and then after that I continued to work out into my 20s, into my 30s, into my 40s. So it's like you can't just say as a 40-year-old that never worked out, oh, I'm going to come into the gym and start looking like this person. It's kind of the same with the NFL athlete in the sense that they've got 15 plus years of explosive activities. They're at this point now where it's like, hey, let's just kind of stay good, stay healthy.
Yeah, find out what works for you.
Let's not do any more damage. So anyway, that was one thing I want to bring up. I want to talk about, 2 things there, kind of mentality-wise, which we talked about enough, but, that slow roast mentality I think is super important. Just to kind of reiterate, I think the importance of that, it's just take your time with everything, and there's really no rush. It's we talk about the cradle to the grave approach. It's like, you got your whole life to work out. Let's just take our time with it. We don't need to advance you to the college program when you're 15. Let's like master stuff.
Exactly.
It's any skill. It's baseball. It's football. Master these fundamental skills, and that's 80% of the sport. As you get older and more advanced, you could add some tweaks here and there, but you could do the chains all you want. But if you can't freaking bench 100 pounds, you're away. Or you see the 9-year-old, you see the 11-year-old that has bands on a bar, and you're like, what the hell's going on here? He can't squat his own body weight, but
I'll throw some bands on there.
I don't like that stuff. That's where
not,
the private sector gets a hit.
Yeah, that's not. Oh man, I get one of my buddies sends me videos all the time of like,
it's great, man.
Different.
Actually, it's
different
not great.
gyms, and
it's actually terrible.
I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're literally gonna hurt somebody. So I don't know. It's
I mean, there's even like some of the science and the research indicates like, hey, you might want to be able to back squat double your body weight before you get involved in some sort of intense plyometric program. I don't really think doing box jumps is like an intense part of it because the landing is not there. You're landing a little bit higher, but like I think they're talking about some of these like old school track and field explosive, a lot of plyometrics. Totally exhausting plyometrics.
Well, you're on the topic of box jumps. Where do you go with that? Like, what do you make of a box jump?
We do them just because we got them.
Yeah, but
so
like,
it's cool.
do you
But like
go-
nobody. Well, honestly, the goal would be every kid like, oh, I want to see how high I could jump, right? So I allow that sometimes. I totally flexible. I will work with kids, and if they're excited about something, I'm like, let's cash in on it. Let's go. But in terms of a great training tool, I don't know. Once every 2 weeks for like some of the athletes, maybe just to kind of do a set of squats. Let's go do 3 jumps.
Yeah,
Come back.
I'm
Kinda
cool.
like the
I'm cool with
contrast
that.
training.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of contrast training in that regard.
You're talking about the run,
yeah, but
do the jump and see if you could land it. Basically, 68.
much.
I just sent a world record box jump, that type of stuff.
Yeah, I
stupid.
see a lot of that stuff, and I'll just shake my head. I'm
So
like,
ideally, you would want the kid to like land in an athletic position.
yes, that's exactly what I
Right.
teach. Yep, and I'll
So-
tell the kid like all the time. They're like you said, I want to see how high I can jump. Now, I'll give some wiggle room every once in a while and be like, all right, like.
Well, I've got the ability to do that because it's a smaller group set
Sure.
where
Yep.
you can't have kids dicking around if you got 35 kids, and it's like we
Exactly.
got to get through this in a set amount of time. So, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's cool. I guess it's good for the interwebs, but it's probably, I don't know. Everybody's got them, right? I mean, it's not going to turn you into the best jumper in the world by any means. But so that was one. Well, no, that wasn't one. That was you. Starting with the end in mind, you kind of talked about, hey, I want this kid to be able to barbell back squat. Is there any other like non-negotiable things that it's like, hey, I worked with this kid for 4 years in high school. At the end of the day, what do I want him or her to be able to accomplish? Do you have certain numbers you want to hit? Obviously, you want them to be proficient at everything, technique-wise. But do you want them, like in terms of a certain standard, do you want them to get to a certain level and everything?
So one of the biggest things I tell a lot of coaches and parents that I work with is that I don't chase numbers in a weight room. Because in my mind, like if you can back squat 500 pounds, like what? Great, you can do it, but what's the added benefit of that for me? Like, I'd rather see at that point how fast can you move the barbell. So a lot of my programming has kind of teetered more towards like the velocity-based stuff. Standards-wise, though, no. Like I don't. I just like to measure things. Like I want to see if a kid's vertical jump has gone up. I want to see. I do a lot of like 10-yard splits, flying 10s. I want to see if those are going down or going up, so I can kind of like tailor my programs around that. I track body weight very often, like once a week. Through that, I'll track like peak power, stuff like that. Like this formula that I use. It's basically body weight and vertical jump, and there's numbers that go involved, and I can track it that way. I think too many times though, coaches are just like in my area, they're just too fixated on like, oh, can this? We have 5 guys back squatting 500 pounds, and we have 15 guys in the 400s. Like, okay, that's great, but like, we're not a powerlifting sport. Like, you're a football team. Like, your job is to try to move someone as forcefully as possible in the shortest amount of time. Right? If you put 500 pounds on someone's back and they go to squat it, if you measured that, the time and distance that they're going is very long and very slow. Versus if I ask that same coach, like, oh, that's great, he did that. Do you want him now to block someone long and slow? And they're like, well, no, why would I want that?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, exactly. Why would I want him to squat 500 pounds long and slow? Now, I won't argue that that's great that he can do that, because that's a feat of strength. Like, you are strong, like you have a solid base. Now let's build on that.
I think that's more than a base, though. I mean, that's high level stuff for
Correct,
a high
yeah.
school kid.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, no, but you would not disagree with, like, you need strength to have power.
Right, correct,
So you need
yes.
to get to a certain point, and you
Right.
know it. It doesn't necessarily need to be a number, but you know it when you see it, and you know when you could advance a kid and when you can. I think, right?
Yep. I also like with the Olympic lifting, like, which I think has gone. I think it's great, but I also think it's gone way overboard in the last 5 years, where everyone thinks they need to hang clean, they need to snatch, they need to do all this Olympic lifting, and I'm over here like, well, you know how much time it takes to teach that? Like in a private setting, like what you have here, like, yeah, you can devote a lot of time to do that. But when I have a team, 40, 50 football players, like, listen, like, I don't have that kind of time to teach a kid how to hang clean with perfect technique.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I guess that's the thing too. It's not going to be perfect.
no,
you
and
know?
I've
So it's whether or not you're going to be okay with that.
right,
you
and
know?
I've been very vocal about that, where it's like, my guys, like, athletes to me, like, that I train, like, I'm not training you to be an Olympic lifter. So if if you can't catch it in a good front rack position, like, I'm sorry, like, you're not hang cleaning. Like, we're going to go to pulls and shrugs. So, I base a lot of things off the force velocity curve, like, and I explain it to coaches when they're like, oh, we're not hang cleaning. I'm like, nah, you can get more bang for your buck by doing like a hang high pull or a hang jump shrug. Like, this is what you want out of it. Now, if I can get a kid in a front rack position, like, through front squatting, and they're comfortable doing that, then yeah, sure, like, catch it. But,
if they're high pulling, do they drop the bar, or do you just have them bring it down?
For me, it depends. It depends. Famous answer in our field. Like,
Yeah.
It depends.
Well, no, that's any field.
Yeah, exactly.
The daughter was in the hospital. Hey, what is this like? So, do you think this is going to be the case for her? Well, it depends. All right. So, in your opinion, do you think this? Well, it depends. Every freaking answer. It's everything.
I don't mind the drop at the top.
No, I don't know, because it's hard to do, right? You get a lot of weight on there. The guard is going up, bam, coming down. So I just didn't know how you handle that.
I would say if it's like, for me, it's if we're based off the reps and the intensity that we're doing. Like, if we're going 1 or 2 reps, like, I might have a kid like, hey, when you come up, boom, just drop at the top, let it go, get out of the way type thing. If we're going like 5 or 6 reps, where it's like relatively lightweight, just come right back down and get set up. So.
I'm personally a huge fan of the hang clean in my personal program, and because of that, everybody does it.
I've gotten back into it. I've done it for a couple months.
I use the good enough approach. I think they're gonna look like crap in the beginning, but I went back and forth. There's some other gyms, like that dude Joe DeFranco.
Yep.
I don't think he does it at all. He does medicine ball throws. He does other stuff, sprints, jumps, whatever. And you could get great.
You can get the same benefit. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's.
But what about the thought of, like, hey, in college, their coach might ask that of them? Do you think about that at all? Like, hey, so like I never back squatted at Saucon. I was just a big front squat fan because I use that to support the clean. Whatever. That was my thought at the time. Frank, well, wonder if they have to back squat it when they get to college. You never did it. You never told them that. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, but I think they could pick it up in the summer leading in.
Yeah. So I mean, and piggybacking off that, they started back squatting when I was there. I mean, it was a really easy transition because all these kids, when you had them, they were front squatting. When I had them, they were front squat. I don't think I introduced back squat until like my 3rd year there. So at that point, like, I had kids that like had good back to the core strength. Good core strength, and they understood how to, like, support themselves and keep chest up, big chest, and like, so it was a very smooth transition. But again, like,
that would honestly that answers the question, because if they could get into that front squat position and squat heavy, that summer leading into school, they could probably learn the clean.
Yeah, right? And I mean, like you said, like, they learn the front rack, like, they learn the clean. Like, I give you like all the props in the world, because like what those kids learned, I was able to then take that and push it a little further. Like, before I left, like, I was starting to teach kids how to, barbell snatch. Like, I had a couple kids learning that like a lot of the girls that were girls and baseball players that like weren't playing football or weren't doing anything in the fall. Like, they had some time to learn all that, and like
smaller group maybe.
Yeah, and even some of the football players, like, they learned. I mean, we had a bunch of hex bars, so I was like, okay, like, it's time to progress this. What can I barbell deadlift? So they were hex bar deadlifting for 3 or 4 years, and I'm like, okay, like, now's the time. If there's any time like the present, like, now's the time to learn how to deadlift.
If you want to define the slow roast, no variation approach, that is me. Hex bar deadlift for 4 years, front squats only, dumbbell snatches and cleans. Who needs variation? At least not in that. Whatever.
It's all good though. Proof's in the pudding.
I know, and there's other people that I like to, like Mike Boyle's like a guy that I go to, and they're not doing anything crazy. They're doing split squats and chin-ups and shit, and that's just what we're going to do, sled push.
The rear foot elevated split squat,
yeah.
that has become my new, I mean, I've always loved that.
So his first book, which was like 12 years old at least by now, they didn't back squat, but they front squatted. And then he went totally away from that.
It's all single leg.
Well, now he does hex bar.
Yeah.
He held the hex bar deadlift. So I still front squat, so I didn't totally follow him, but he was the reason that the front squat became a thing.
Dude, listen,
Functional Training for Sports or something was the book, I think.
He's the reason why I'm transitioning everything over to, like...
And he does the 10-yard sprints with everybody. He times them all, yeah.
Yeah, rear foot elevated split squats. Like, that
one... You need a certain level of strength for that, too.
Yeah,
so
correct.
He has this kid's freaking... He has, like, 12-year-old girls hitting 70 to 90 pounds.
Goblet squats.
And then I got girls coming in that are going Division I for a sport, and I'm like, hey, girls, we gotta get into these big 50s, 60s, 70s, because we're a little bit behind here. But, yeah, no, I think that's great. That's why I think where it's like, you get to a certain point, you were talking about that 500-pound squat, law of diminishing returns. You get to that point, hey, we could hit 315 for reps maybe, or you could do your body weight for 10, whatever your number is, whatever you have in your mind. And it's like, maybe we need to advance this a little bit, because we could add 5-10 pounds on every few months, but really we're not going to get that big improvement in sport anymore. We're going to kind of teeter out, so we need to challenge ourselves a little bit more. And we talked about that too with the arm action stuff. Now, Frank and I talked about it in the last podcast where I saw this guy did some research at Westchester, and it's like arm action. He had people run like this, and then he had people, track athletes, run normal. They only found a 1% increase in strength with it when they ran with their arms than without their arms. So it's like, do you really want to spend months or 20% of your training time on a skill or on a part of the run that you're only going to get 1% of return out of? So it's like we could continue to try to build strength in one of our strengths, but we might be able to get more if we focus on a weakness or focus on another attribute, which brings me to my next point. We were at that wrestling match at Saucon. I saw you there. I'm talking strengths and I'm talking weaknesses. You know, some people have incredible strength. I'm going to talk about Faraz Sahabi, great MMA coach. This guy, Kevin Lee, he just head kicked Gregor Gillespie about a month ago. Gillespie, who I was just in his hometown the other day, Santa Mauritius. I had no idea he was from the same town where Maurice's family lives. Kevin Lee, so Faraz Sahabi's like, dude, this guy's freaking jacked. He's got the power. He's got the strength. When we're in camp, we're not going to work on strengths. We're not going to focus on strengths. We have to get his weakness up. So when you look at certain kids, there's almost variability there too, where it's like, hey, this kid is freaking strong, man. And it's like, but his conditioning sucks.
Yeah.
Do we really? So I just had this thought recently. So when I was at Saucon, I didn't, this wasn't even on my radar. If you were great at benching, maybe I shouldn't have you bench. You're already good enough. Let's get you a new skill. Or if you're good at, so basically my mind was like, hey, let's get your military press up to a point, then let's start push pressing.
Yep.
Maybe we could start push jerking. If you get good at that, maybe you can split jerk it. But anyway, it's like, you got to continue to, number one, challenge in which we talked about. But then what is your thoughts on that in the sense of like, this guy's freaking jacked and strong. His conditioning sucks. Does he really need to strength train with everybody else, or do you think he should focus on, you know, more, so maybe he does need to condition in his sport more, you know?
So, yeah.
This is a new thought of mine.
Yeah,
I don't have it formulated yet. But.
You know, I think the biggest challenge in our field at the moment, which I think is getting better, like in the beginning, we were talking about the workout cards, right? Like, you know, you'd have a kid on a card for 4 weeks, they'd hand in a new one. I do the same thing. I love pen and paper. Like, give a kid a workout.
It teaches them something, too.
Correct.
It teaches them progression and all that shit, and they get to see what's going on.
Where I think we get kind of handcuffed with that, though, is we might not necessarily, I mean, you can, but we might not necessarily be able to change things up on the fly, right? So one of the things that we're getting at Springport is Team Builder. It's great, you know, software where I can like monitor just about anything and everything and write up one program and blast it out and the kids get it like on their phone and stuff like that. But to that point, you're just gonna have to alter a kid's workout a little bit. Like if you already are strong, like I'm not necessarily gonna worry about like packing more size on you. Like
let's not take that 5-minute rest between squat sets, and maybe we'll get you on the minute.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, every minute you're banging a set where you forces you might have to lighten that load up.
Yeah, so it's like every kid's gonna have their team program, but inside that team program, like and again, like you might be dealing with kids with injuries where you have to tailor their program a certain way. You might have kids that are really weak that they need need to get stronger. Like
they might need that 5-minute rest because they need to recover.
Yeah, one of the things, and I was talking to a couple of the football coaches at Springford before break, and I was like, in the weight room that they currently are out of, like they have 4 racks and they might get 40 or 50 guys in there. And I'm like, listen, like what was the emphasis of the workout? Like, are you tailoring it more towards, the guys that don't need it, or are you tailoring it towards the guys that do need it? Like, if you're a teacher in a classroom and you're teaching math, right? Teaching calculus, and you have 2 students, one gets A's on everything and one gets C's on everything. I'm still going to give each kid individual attention, but I'm going to spend a little bit less time on the kid that gets A's and try to spend a little bit more time with the kid that gets C's to try to get them up to speed.
Bring that bottom up.
Yeah, so exactly like what you were saying before about like in the weight room, like with bench press, like this guy's really good at bench pressing. Do I need to give him more benching? Whereas like this kid can't do a push-up, like I'm gonna spend more time trying to figure out how, like, you know,
Get his core right.
Exactly, core strength. It always is gonna come back to core strength. Just remember that.
It kind of does, I guess.
So, but yeah, like in that regards, like, you know, and that's a thing about being, I think, a trait of being a good coach is, you know, figuring out athletes' strengths and weaknesses. Like, you know, I like that old saying, like, great athletes make great coaches. Like, you don't have to be the world's greatest coach, but if you've been blessed with like a team of athletes that like are just freaks, like, you can
You're looking
just
good.
send them out there and they'll go play and win you games. But in a weight room wise, like, yeah, like, you know, it's just all about like finding the kids that need certain things versus the ones that don't, and you know, that's where the artistic creativity comes into play with that.
Yeah. I kind of like that, and I kind of think we might want to wrap it up with that kind of thought there, because I thought it was pretty good.
Cool,
the
man.
only other thing I had was another key word, man. We got the core situated. Everything always comes back to the core. And like this whole, there's like a mobility. So how much time, I don't know, what's your thoughts here, man? Everybody thinks their kid's tight. Everybody thinks whatever. Like, where does that play a role in your programming, say?
So I will go during their warm-ups. Like, I'm not a big static stretch guy. Like, I think there are some benefits to it. Like, I know the girls basketball team at Springford, they used to do a dynamic warm-up, and then they would go and do a static stretch. And I'm like, nah, get rid of that. Do that at the end of practice.
Yeah.
So in my warm-ups, like, everything is dynamic, whether we're doing like walking quad pulls, you know,
You like stretch the muscle, then it gets used again.
yeah, exactly. And I place more of an emphasis on like the hamstring than I do quad. Like, I've never really heard someone say like, "Oh, I can't touch my toes because my quads are tight." Like it's always the hamstrings. And
Yeah, you
know,
know what? You're right. I
talk
mean,
to the athletic trainers
getting
and
into a squat position, a deadlift. It's usually the posterior that is
Yeah.
the issue.
talk to the athletic trainers, and they're like, "Oh, I got a couple kids with lower back pain." I'm like, "Can you touch your toes?" Nope.
core's
All
weak,
right,
man.
well, there we go. Let's
It's
do
the freaking
some
core again.
But yeah, but yeah,
No.
but no, touching on your point, like, yeah, like throughout all the warm-ups that we do, like, I make sure there's always going to be a stretch component. Like, you're not gonna, like, me personally, and when I work out, like, I need like a good 10 to 15 minutes of like stretching and warming up and like hip mobility and like stuff like that.
Getting
like,
old, bro. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm almost 30, man. Like, clock's ticking.
So you know what? I guess it all comes back to like the enough saying, where it's like, that athlete's strong enough. Maybe we can advance it.
Yeah.
He's mobile enough. We don't need to do it. Like, somebody could come in and naturally touch their toes. They're fine. You might want to tighten them up instead of stretch them more.
Sure.
The kid, like our boy who won't mind us naming him Stevie Rose, he needed some of that aggressive stretching, I think, because
Yes,
he
absolutely.
was so freaking tight, and still is. But he's getting better, and so I think there's a place for it. You know, if you're good enough at something, you don't play to your strengths. Attack some of those weaknesses. I think that could potentially be
Absolutely.
the answer to everything.
Couldn't agree more.
Boom, it's done. What do we got here? YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes. It's out there, guys. Well, Geosits, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah,
It was
thanks
good
for
seeing
having
you.
me, man.
Good
Great
catching
seeing
up.
you.
Probably going to have to get you on here again.
Whatever.
Podcast over, man. Peace, everybody.